Hey everyone, so welcome to today's Lounge broadcast. My name's Mare and I'm a program manager with Gender Spectrum. And here we have a broadcast of campfire stories from students at the crossroads of race and gender. So throughout history and across many cultures, campfires have been the centerpiece for voices broadcasting this campfire conversation for trans, gender-expansive, and queer youth of color at the crossroads of race and gender. So students will share stories and experiences about their experience in educational spaces, and we're hoping these stories will influence educators and leaders everywhere to account for the experiences of students navigating their racial and gender identities. Just a quick logistical note, we'll be taking questions throughout and at the end of the program. If you'd like to ask questions, please click on the link on the cluster of squares at the top right part of your screen. When you click on that, you'll be able to move back and forth between the Q&A function and the showcase, which include links for both organizations. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Wesley Thomas from Advocates for Youth.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on what coast you're joining us from. My name is Wesley Thomas, and I'm the program coordinator of LGBTQ Health and Rights at Advocates for Youth. What we are here to do today, as Mayor so eloquently told us, is to share stories. Campfires are known to just be a space that authentically and organically allow people to share experiences and really just get a chance to build community. Just a little bit of background about the My Story Out Loud campaign. It is an online campaign that involves storytelling from young people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender nonconforming, any essentially non-heterosexual identity, and also identify as a person of color, and really intentionally highlighting the stories of experiences that they have at those intersections on college campuses in order to start a larger conversation of what it means to create a safe and supportive environment on college campuses for people that do sit at the intersections of race, gender, and identity or orientation. So we have three students from three separate campuses that will share with us their stories about some of the experiences that they've had on their campuses. So we have Denzel, who joins us from Texas Southern University, a rising junior. We have Morgan Fontaine, who is from North Carolina Central University, who is also going to be going to law school soon, so that is exciting. And we also have Ramon, who is a rising senior from Morehouse College. So we're going to first take it to Denzel, who will talk to us a little bit about the experiences that he has had at Texas Southern University. Without any further ado, I will hand it over to Denzel.
Hello. My name is Denzel Cameron, rising junior, music major at the Texas Southern University. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, so I am a Southern boy. And one thing I can say specifically about growing up in the South, it's very hard being a person of color, but not only being a person of color, but being anything different than straight. And I started my college career, and I'm not going to touch too much on it because my brother, we both became friends there. I started my college career at Morehouse College, my dream school since I was 5. I'm going to let you have it, Ray. But not only growing up in the South, but going to an HBCU in the South, the values and the morals of an HBCU below the Mason-Dixon line is very hard, as if it's stuck in 1965. I mean, the expectation of women is still behind time. The expectation of what a man is still behind time. So it was very hard for me when I first got to college to even adjust. I will never forget, even though as great as Atlanta is, but when you walk in the gates of Morehouse College, if you don't have on a suit and they're not just, if the essence of you is not this hyper masculine man, well then you got to go, because you're too different. So one thing that was hard for me was because I'm not overly masculine, or you see I'm light skinned, so I used to get teached for that, not being black enough. It was very hard to adjust in college. And at the time, I was still battling with myself of what I was and my sexuality. So it didn't help. And just a little background note, with me being a preacher's kid, a Southern Methodist preacher's kid who grew up, always in church, always going to every church function, always being in the limelight of what is expected of a pastor's family. All of these things I was battling with, and it's actually a similar battle for a lot of people, a lot of people of color especially. So when I got to Morehouse, I met a brother that became my friend that really helped me come into my own. He's one of the panelists today. Ray, he taught me how to, as he used to always say this quote, walk in my truth. He still says it. And I never understood, but he really helped me understand myself and understand that being who you are is a part of the calling of which a higher power gives you. For you all that believe in God, and for you all that believe in a universe, who are you all who believe in something? When you finally accept yourself for who you are, you notice how easy a life gets for you. Because one, you're focused more solely in who you are than what people think or say you should be. And when that happened for me, oh boy, I can honestly say there was a rainbow over my head. And sadly, I left Morehouse because I battled cancer. But after I finally survived cancer, it brought me to the Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. Now, Georgia was hard, but ain't nothing harder than Texas. Let me tell you, when I got here, I thought, I was proud of who I was, and then I know who I am. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Man, let me tell you, this was my first time at a co-ed school since high school, because Morehouse is all male. So not only am I dealing with what men say I should be, but what women say I should be as well. So I just had to make a decision as soon as I got here. Am I going to be persecuted by anyone because of what I'm not? Or am I just going to show them who I am and just tell them, well, you just going to have to deal with it? And the way I did that, in a natural sense, I just spread my rainbows everywhere. I joined SGA, got on the Royal Court. I just was in everything. So you know what? Because I was in everything, I made sure there was a voice for someone like me who necessarily thought that they did not have a voice. I made sure that I was that voice and that beacon of light and hope for them. That's one thing that I tell everybody. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to take the hard beating so that someone else can have it easier. And coming to Texas Southern University, they do not, at this point, have a gay-straight alliance. A school of more than 10,000 students, male and female, do not have a safe space for someone like you and I, or allies who believe in the work that we do. So that is what inspired me to create the proposal for TSQ, Texas Southern Queer Society, which will be chartered in the fall, which I am very happy about. And one thing I can say that this was a calling from up above, with the help of my friend at Morehouse College and the help of and support of friends and loved ones at other HBCUs who believe that we all deserve a space. That if everybody else has one, why can't we have one? To be who we are, to be safe in who we are. And it's still a process, because for me, every day is a process for me, learning something new about myself over and over again. You know, I mean, I started out college as this very masculine athlete. Lord knows, was that a lie? But you know, it's one thing you learn more and more about yourself, and you learn how to be comfortable. And once people see how organic you are and how wholesome, loving you are of yourself, people will just begin to start to love you and love what you stand for. Um, for anyone who is interested in going to an HBCU, do your research, visit. Being at a historically black institution, you should know that a lot of the ideals are still stuck, of what it is based on. As much as I love our institutions, there's a long road ahead of us. But I'm thankful for my colleagues here, many that aren't even seen, that are behind the scenes of the work that they do at our institutions to really believe in equality, diversity, and inclusivity. But yeah, that's Denzel in a nutshell. I'm summarizing for the most part. But yes, always be who you are. And let me tell you, and if the friends around you won't allow you to be who you are, well, you need to find some new friends who accept you for who you are. Love yourself, even when no one else will show you love. Love yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Denzel. I wish I could give like a round of applause, but you touched on a couple of things that I really just wanted to tease out and make sure that folks were able to really hear some of the things that you talked about in terms of steps to get to where you are today. So you talked about finding your community, which is it can be difficult on any campus. You know, even when we talk about HBCUs and thinking that there's a bunch of people of color around, so this is my community. But it's really about finding people that identify with the same set of struggles or identities that you do. So I wanted to bring that out. Getting involved, when you don't see something at a university or on a campus or in a group, then that might be that calling for you to be that something. So that I wanted to make sure that we talked about that too. Visibility is very important. I know sometimes outside of safety concerns, which are also a big issue about being visible on campus, but visibility is important. Universities love to use this excuse that, well, we don't have any gay students, or we don't have any trans students, or our policies are fine now because no one's come and complained to us. That's why visibility is so important, and that's why engaging at your institution is so important, because if you are not seen, they will erase you. And then lastly, just taking that initiative, and as Denzel said, as opposed to me waiting for my university to create a space for me, I created it and brought it to my university. So Denzel, thank you for all the work that you're doing on Texas Southern University's campus to create spaces for people that identify as you, but also just for setting that groundwork about what took you through those steps. So thank you so much for that. So next we have Morgan Fontaine, who is from North Carolina Central University, and she will share some of her story from her time on that campus. And without further ado, we have Morgan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Morgan. I am at school at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. Yes, North Carolina is fun right now. I guess everybody's kind of heard about what we're going through, and I kind of get a double dose of it being at an HBCU campus and being in North Carolina. It is an interesting experience. I guess all of the intersections that already mix on our campus, and then to add in the LGBTA community in a space where the community around it is not accepting, to try to build that home for new students who are coming in, for students who are already there and are still searching for home and for space. We've come a long way actually on our campus. When it comes to inclusion and visibility, we were able to open our LGBTA Center, and we have now 2 student organizations running through that. One student organization is Colors, and that one is geared towards the LGBT plus community, making sure that we do have events and campus space and, you know, I guess community and family to uplift, empower each other, to be seen, to make sure that we have our voices and heard on campus. Make sure we have resources for students on campus. And our other organization is the Lavender Project, which we actually recently started last semester. That one is an ally organization. That one is focused more on building student allies, making sure that students and faculty on campus know what it is to be an ally. Make sure those people are educated on the LGBT community's issues, making sure that when we go into these spaces and we're trying to make these things work and make these things change, that we have support, that we have people that we can reach out to, that we have faculty in different offices that are willing to work with students, willing to be a listening ear. Make sure we have teachers who are I guess open and understanding and willing to learn, even if they don't know, that they're willing to learn, they're willing to take this on. I think the most interesting experience I've had at my university, as far as my identity, and I'm sorry that I didn't give you all that. I am a gender nonconforming or gender fluid, non-binary lesbian, and I believe the most interesting experience I had was actually last semester. Coronation. It was during homecoming time. We always have coronation. That's when the student body Mr. and Miss are crowned, student organization Mr. and Miss are crowned, and of course the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior Mr. and Miss. Our student organizations for the LGBTA Center, we definitely wanted them included in coordination. We wanted to see Colors Mr. and Miss walk. We wanted to see Lavender Project have their Mr. and Miss walk. So that was good. Lavender Project had just started, so it was a little push to try to get us in, and we received a little pushback, but we made it happen. The interesting thing prior to that, I'm also a part of a student organization known as NABJA, NABCJ, National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, because I'm a criminal justice major. I was elected to be the Miss for NABJA, the student organization, and we're in a general body meeting with everyone sitting around discussing nominations, and the professor, one of our professors who was the advisor, he stops everyone mid-conversation and looks at me and he says, if you're Miss for NABJA, you're gonna have to dress like a girl, right? You're gonna have to be feminine. You're gonna have to wear heels and get pretty and all, in front of the entire general body. And I kind of laughed it off. It burned a little bit, but I kind of laughed it off, and I was just like, I know that, I'm aware, and everybody else has seen me a part of a student organization that is a modeling troupe on campus, and so they know that if and when I like to, I can put on heels and dress and makeup and be perfectly fine. But the way that he kind of threw it at me was like, you're not qualified, you're underqualified for the position, or no, we're not going to even try. And so I told, I'm completely fine with that. I know what's included, but that's not the point of being the Miss for the organization, is to be pretty for you all. So that's cool. Then he's like, okay, all the candidates out, everybody who's nominated out of the room. And as we're walking out, he tells them, we're going to have this discussion, and right now it's GPA and grades don't matter. And that's the last thing that I heard before I closed the door. And I come back in, and the nominations are erased off of the board, and now there's 2 guys and only 1 female there, so clearly she won, and they took me off the board, and they were like, yeah, so this is our Miss, now we vote for Mr. Okay, cool. So afterwards, I go to his office, and I talk to him, and I was like, did you really tell them not to vote me in as Miss because I'm not feminine, or because I'm not always girly? He's like, well, you're just a wild card. He didn't say no. He didn't tell him not to. He said, you're just a wild card. We don't know sometimes what we're going to get from you, and I don't, if you're going to be girly, or if you're going to you like to dress how you like to dress when you like to dress that way. Okay. So coronation night comes, and I ended up being Miss Lavender Project anyway. So I let that go, and coronation night comes, and afterwards he walks up to me, and I'm in a floor-length ball gown, 7-inch heels, full face makeup, and he looks at me and he's like, wow. And I was like, you didn't even recognize who I was at first. He was like, I didn't even know. Well, too bad. Now you're somebody else's miss. So now my professors are even doing this where it's I have to look and be a certain person to be valid, even though you're one of my professors, you know my grades are well, and I'm earning my degree under your tutelage. I still am not good enough because of something. You know, it was a really hard thing to deal with. And coronation night comes during coronation. Our Mr. and Miss for colors. Our Mr. is a transgender male, and he's also like everything for coronation. We had practices. Everybody did great. Coronation night comes, and instead of identifying him by his correct name, they pull his birthday name out of some book and call it over the loudspeaker, and everybody's like in the gym, and this is homecoming, so it's packed, everybody's here, and you say Mr. and Miss Colors, and then you completely misname him as he walks out in front of everybody, and that was like crushing. And you know, it's like we've made so much progress. We have a center. We have an LGBTA center in our student union. We have 2 student organizations. We're very active and open on our campus. And it's like the closer we get to being a part. It seems like the closer we get to being a part of our campus community, the closer we get to being visible and accepted in other spaces the same way other student organizations are, the more pushback we receive. But I think that comes with the way that I guess the African American community views what it is to be homosexual, what it means to be LGBT, what it means to identify outside of, like he said, being an educated black female, or educated black male. And I've always felt like I fell into the middle of that, like because I'm middle gender. I've always felt like I was in that space in between that didn't have a face. Like I've always felt like my identity was faceless, or people didn't understand what it looks like, because we have great representations of cis LGBT activists. We have great representations of transgender LGBT activists, and it's kind of like those are the people that you see in the forefront, and you'd never really get a look at what the middle gender community is feeling in these spaces. And when we have these things going on, they're pushing these things, and then I'm faced with these things on campus or when I'm talking to people. And so I had to kind of stop and look at it like, instead of me waiting for somebody else to tell me what I'm supposed to like or who I'm supposed to be, I need to make it my own. I need to figure out how I'm going to identify and what I'm going to have to make people okay with. It's no longer me walking into somebody else's space trying to be comfortable. It's now I'm in this space, and I want you to exist in it with me. So take me as I am. Understand me, learn me, you know. And I'm still learning, and I'm still growing as well. But knowing that I've seen both ends where my gender identity, my self-expression, and all of that is very much praised, is welcome. And I'm in these spaces, people are like, you know, live your truth, live in your truth. And I think that's that rings in my head all the time, people saying live your truth. But I've also been on the other end of it where people are saying your truth is not okay, so mask it. I had to find that space in between where I'm saying this is me, this is what's true. And yes, I go to a very old school HBCU that believes this is what it's supposed to be this way, but we have a whole new generation of students coming through that are saying it's time to stop living in what was and be progressive. Let's go to what is. Let's help other people realize that it's other things out there that we can all expand and live and coexist in the space together.
Thank you so much for that, Morgan. I know we've talked a lot about that story, and it still gives me like are you serious right now by calling somebody by their wrong name. But it is a testament to, you know, as what was said earlier about how much work we have to do So even taking it a step further beyond, yes, we have groups on campus that, their essential space is to educate. And yet we have our universities that don't even engage us in those capacity building exercises. You want to build competency of your staff and of your faculty around LGBT identities, but don't engage the LGBT organization on campus. And I also think, Morgan, and I appreciate you speaking a little bit about kind of non-binary and non-binary identities, and even looking at binary as in gay, lesbian, and straight. Carving out spaces for people that are bi-attracted, pan-attracted, people that are non-conforming, people that, are fluid. How do we create space inside of our LGBT community for those people, which is also equally important? I think oftentimes we kind of think, well, everybody has an identity that isn't straight or cis, so we're all together and we all have the same agenda, and it's not necessarily true. I think when we call ourselves as a community being inclusive, we have to make sure that if there isn't a space for a group that we know of, we need to make sure that we carve out that space and make sure that we're listening and understanding that everybody, just because we all may have the same attraction, we may have similar identities or similar lived experiences, that doesn't mean that progress is going to look the same to everyone. You also touched on a very important point about adult allies. So finding on campus, maybe you have faculty that identify as LGBT and is just as unapologetic about it as you are, or you have someone that teaches the LGBT courses on campus, or even women's studies. Sometimes, there's a very queer component to that field of study. So finding those individuals and engaging them and letting them have those conversations that you might not be able to have with their colleagues, because we can't be everywhere, especially as students. I have to worry about finals, in this student group, and I just have to live every single day. So going up to the university staff and saying, I want to educate and I want to do this and that, it can be an extra set of burdens that are put upon us needlessly. So it's important for us to make sure that when we're engaging adult allies, that they have just as much stake in progress as we do. And sometimes that means taking the extra step to get them on board. And, it's not to say that we can't have cis heterosexual allies, but we really have to make sure that they're on the same place as us, because if they're not as passionate about it as we are, they're not going to talk about it as passionately when they're advocating. And I think you also touched on a very important piece about resilience in tandem with patience. So how do I survive and how do I thrive on this campus, and how do I continue to deal with these attacks based on my gender and my ethnicity and my orientation, while still waiting for that change to come and still having those conversations and still making sure that everyone takes their time to process. Because when you're talking about HBCUs and you're talking about the history of Black culture in this country, there's just a lot of deconstructing that has to happen, and that doesn't happen overnight. But it's still people's identities on the line. So just trying to find that balance between being resilient, being patient, and being proactive. So Morgan, thank you so much for your story. I really appreciate that. And so lastly, but not leastly, we have Dr. Ramon. That's just his name on Facebook, everybody. I'm just playing with you. He is a rising senior at Morehouse. And without further ado, we are going to have Ramon to share his story.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramon Johnson. I am identified as a cisgendered queer Black man. And first of all, I would like to just say that I love my institution. However, I believe that you cannot truly love your institution if you are not going to challenge it and critique it when it's wrong. And one of the things that I found out when I came to Morehouse College was that I came to Morehouse seduced by this respectable image of a cisgendered heterosexual Black man who speaks well and who is, very successful. And it was all those things that I wanted to be, because I wanted to assimilate. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to make my family proud. But I didn't know that I was really just feeling this void of this false sense of self. And I eventually hit a wall and realized that I had to really be true to who I am. And I could only do that until I found reflections of myself in Morehouse Safe Space. And it was there that I found community organizers and student activists who were open about who they are, and who were organizing and just basically, turning the campus out. I mean, just making progressive change at that at the institution. And I was really inspired by their work so much that I decided to join. And once I started to join, I started to become more comfortable in who I am. I began to even started to I started to develop these forms of self-care by reading literature and being around folks who I admired, and that helped me to really be confident in who I am and to embrace and come into myself. But even and I don't want to romanticize safe space, or even what it is like being queer on that campus. So I would like to also discuss the challenges that I had to face when I decided to get involved as a on the executive board of Morehouse Safe Space. I noticed that a lot of the students um, who were queer, they became complacent. They were trying to ascribe to this ideal image of a Morehouse man because it's deeply rooted in heteropatriarchy. And when I say that, I mean that because it's an all-male institution, it is believed that every student is cisgendered and heterosexual. And anything that is outside of that norm is going to be automatically marginalized. So if you're a queer student and you're feminine or anything that is not binary, some of the students, I would say, they did anything they could in order to assimilate, whether that was joining SGA, wearing suits and ties, speaking a certain way. I would say also joining certain organizations or trying to avoid specific openly queer students who were gender nonconforming in order to socially advance. And I saw that I had to check myself because I experienced that in different organizations, and some of those organizations I had to let go of. Some of those people I had to let go of because as I began to come into myself, they would look at me and say, well, Ramon, you know what? They began to criticize me for coming into myself. And it was a hard process, but at the end of the day, it helped me to really appreciate who I am as a queer Black man. And when I studied our history as an organization, seeing in the early '90s how we weren't even able to meet on campus as an organization, how student activists like Karan Williams, Jafari Allen, Jura Peoples, Kevin Webb, Bishop O.C. Allen, like how they chartered Morehouse Safe Space. Fast forward to 2002, I mean, it took a while for the campus to really get used to the idea of having gay students, and they're not even wrapping their heads around gender yet. So it's still focusing on the sexuality aspect. And I will also add to that, one of the ways that we try to celebrate our identities on campus is we've done this. It's been a wonderful tradition we've had, but we've had Pride Weeks since 2010, and Pride Weeks were formed to basically celebrate the different identities from not only just being gay, but trans, gender nonconforming, bisexual, queer, and femme, and just studying and focusing on our diasporas, and also just seeing to see students organize around those issues on campus when it came to gender, sexuality, and even the issues on campus that made students marginalized. It was very inspirational. So one of the experience that I would like to take from was during Pride Week, we had did a historic event, which was by having a Pride Hump Wednesday. And if you've ever been to a Hump Wednesday at Morehouse College, it's packed out from students from all across the AUC and sometimes neighboring schools in the Atlanta area. And they have a DJ and everyone's eating, dancing, and it's very fun and everything. But for me, and I know other queer students, like I never went to Hump Wednesdays because I didn't feel included. So we decided to make a Pride Hump Wednesday, and we had the DJ play music that, ballroom music, J-set music. And one of the things that we wanted to have was a J-set team come on campus, because the theme of our Pride Week for this year was art and activism. And so we went to get it approved by administration, and they approved it at first. But then, I want to say 2 days before before the Pride Hump Wednesday, the administration said, "Hey, can we see a video of the JSET team?" And they did not like what they saw. They said that the JSET team was too provocative because of what they were wearing and how they were dancing. Mind you, now we have a Mahogany in Motion at Morehouse College, which is basically almost the same as a JSEC team, except it's just full of ladies in leotards and glitter and hair and laid for the gods, and they're dancing. But I think one of the reasons why they did not allow a JSEC team to come on campus was because they couldn't see they couldn't it was through a heteronormative lens. Like, of course, guys want to see girls dancing in leotards, aka Mahogany in Motion. But to see Black feminine men in leotards dancing is almost like a threat to the institution. So that, I think, in that instance showed how Morehouse can be very gender complacent. And when I say gender complacent, I mean that the institution is very comfortable in capitalizing off of students who are cisgendered and othering students who are not in the binary. So, of course, Morehouse is the all-male institution. So they start to, pack on these ideals of what, a man is. A man is masculine, cisgendered, and everything. But anything that is outside of that norm is a threat to the institution. So the E-Board got together one night. Actually, it was the night before, and we were very upset. I remember getting out of class, and the vice president of Safe Space, Timothy Toots, texted me and was like, "Ramon, we need to go to the president's office, and we need to raise hell." And I was like, "Okay, let's go." And so we get to the president's office, and we're like, you know what? Because Boomer Inde was at the time the president, and we said, you know what? Let's let Boomer make this call. But we still we contacted the president's secretary and let her know, hey, this is discrimination, and we are willing to do something about this if the administration is not going to correct their wrongs. So we gathered that night, and different student organizers from the AUC was like, okay, so what are y'all gonna do? We're gonna do something about this, right? Y'all need to allow the JSET team to come on campus regardless. And we had an even better idea, and this is what really blew my mind. Students from Clark Atlanta, queer students from Clark Atlanta, Morehouse College, and surrounding schools got together and formed the JSET team. And these are mainly students who who have done JSET in the past and who are good at it, and they organized this routine. And when it came to Hump Wednesday, they performed the hell out of that show. We had queer hip hop performers who were students at Morehouse College, and also the Du Bois Divas performed and strolled. And for those of you who don't know who the Du Bois Divas are, the Du Bois Divas are a gay stroll team at Morehouse College. And basically, the stroll, it's a tradition for different halls to compete through stroll. And a lot of queer students don't feel accepted, and some students don't fear. They fear not making stroll teams because they're either too feminine. And so what I loved about it was that they made their own path, and they created their own stroll team, and they strolled at Hump Wednesday like any other fraternity would. And I loved seeing that, you know, they were all freshmen, and to see all these freshmen, you know, just in unison and strolling and being proud of who they are, like that was really empowering, not only to the upperclassmen, but even to, you know, I think all students who were on the margins or felt like they were on the margins that day. And during Hump Wednesday, we had signs that said, JSET is not provocative, it is an art form. And while they were performing, we held up those signs, and administration, like, they had them lined up on Kilgore's campus, and they were looking like, oh my God, like everybody was just shocked, you know, to see that not only that we had a JSET team, but also to see that, you know, the queer students knew how to organize and protest. And that was it was a beautiful sight to see, just to see, because in the past it's been really tough mobilizing Black queer folks on that campus. But I think that each year you have, you know, a different class that is more progressive, and not only with just the queer students, but the cisgender heterosexual students are more inclusive as well. So I think that, you know, it's, as long as we continue to, you know, hold the institution accountable, that change will definitely happen. I actually authored a Steps to Campus Inclusivity in the fall of 2015, and one of the and the list of steps to campus inclusivity, they're going to be executed during the June of this year. And one of those steps is getting an LGBT resource center on campus. So I hope that the institution, you know, follows through on it. And if they don't, of course, we're going to hold them accountable by, you know, not just protesting, but, you know, just, you know, holding the LGBT task force accountable as well. And yeah, and I think that as long as we're doing this, we're setting a great example for incoming students and letting them know that, hey, if you want to be accepted at this institution, if you want to have space, if you want to feel included, you have to speak up.
That was a very dynamic way to end our storytelling component. And just before I open it up for any kind of Q&A or last thoughts, I wanted to just kind of tease out some of the things that you spoke on. So just queer identities in general specifically resonate with me, because I feel like queer identities are what's going to save the world. The more we can embrace the fact that people don't live in this straight or gay, cisgender, transgender, that there's just a range of expressions that exist, the more that we are open to those conversations, the more we can breathe a little bit. You know, it's kind of like what Morgan was saying earlier about having to hide, to assimilate, or to be complacent, or just to survive, and not knowing that those survival techniques are at the cost of our own health in some cases. And I think it's important that you mentioned, too, the amount of self-reflection that we all should be doing as activists or as people in the community about what type of stand do we want to take. Because I do know, and this is for me personally, you know, I'm not necessarily like the front lines kind of person. I might not be at the rally. I might not hold the sign up. But can I get people to sign a petition? Can I recruit people to come to this event? Do I know a DJ that I can connect you to for a low cost that, you know, can make the event even better? So just knowing that there's so many different ways to engage, that you don't necessarily have to feel overwhelmed with, you know, I'm not a mobilizer, I'm not an organizer. Even though those skills are important, there's so many more ways to support progress and inclusivity, that, you know, it's just really about doing that self-reflection and understanding how far or how much am I willing to engage. And also, Ramon, what you talked about is self-care. I also feel like queer communities are the best source of self-care, when you can talk to other people that identify like you and just get it, and just kind of, even if it's just like venting and just talking about all the things that everybody already knows is an issue, but just being able to say that freely and not have someone push back and say, well, maybe if you just didn't flick your wrist like that, you wouldn't have so many. No, it's not about that. It's about me being me and people respecting that. Also knowing that, you know, and this is with a lot of movements that are happening right now, is that the work is never officially done. and the moment that we have that moment where we're like, we've done everything, we're in a good place, that's the exact moment that either someone's going to fall through the cracks or something's going to come up that's going to knock all of that down. So just always knowing that continuing to do the work, continuing to mobilize, continuing to organize, but also giving yourself some roses for all the work that you have done. But just knowing that there's always another step that you can take to make people feel more included. And also just the power in grassroots and on the ground mobilizing. It doesn't take anything to call a friend who will call a friend who will call a friend. And then it's about 20 of y'all at the president's office organizing, and they don't know how it happened. I didn't see a trace of anything on Facebook, and now you're at my house. But we're here, and you have to listen. You have to engage. And despite the fact that you may not respect my identity, I still pay a tuition, which is an identity that you can't ignore. So as long as you are still getting my federal dollars or my scholarship dollars or my actual money, because I'm paying out of pocket, then you got to listen to what I got to say. So I really appreciate you for sharing that. I appreciate all of our presenters and storytellers for sharing their stories. This was dynamic and just gets my soul. But I do want to open it up for other folks that may be joining us that may have any questions or would like to ask any of our presenters anything about their experiences. We do want to open it up for questions at this time.
I see a question that came in from Tessa. Tessa says, thank you for sharing your stories. This has been so helpful to hear. Y'all have faced some unique challenges on your individual campuses and still seem so positive. How do you stay positive when you face these challenges? Who wants to jump in and take a stab at that one first?
Okay, I'll go for it. I'm sorry, my camera fell. Staying positive through challenges, the best thing that I've always had to do, and it's tough in a little way, but it made me stronger. I had to realize that nobody's ever going to be prouder of me than I will be. Nobody's going to appreciate me. Nobody's going to, acknowledge when I've done better or when I've come from a bad place into a better place. Nobody can do that the way that I can. And yeah, it's great to feel, acknowledged. It's great to feel that somebody recognizes the things that you do, but in your work, strive to do better for yourself. Strive to see better for people in your situation, or people who, you look at your situation, you're like, wow, I came from that. I sit here all the time and I think, oh my goodness, I came from that. I remember that day, that time, that place in my life. And I always think, I was there, and my story is something that I went through could help somebody else. And it doesn't matter what this current struggle is that I'm in right now. I'm gonna bring myself out of it. The people in my corner we're gonna get through this together. We're gonna come out on the other side, and nobody's going to be prouder of us than we are, because nobody else understands what that fight took to get there. Whether it's with school, whether it's, fighting through understanding your identity. Because like they say, don't check other people's boxes for them. And when it comes to other people's identity, I like for see how you feel most respected when you are identified a certain way. Nobody can check anybody else's boxes. Nobody can tell you what your identity is supposed to come across as, what your identity is supposed to look like, what your self-expression is supposed to be. So strive to make yourself proud in that. Strive to make yourself feel whole and you are what you're pushing for.
If I may, just a little piggyback, just a little bit, one thing that I learned is we are only as happy as we want to be. So if you already decided in your life that you're going to be happy, you're going to be happy, regardless of what anybody else says. Now, if you're saying you're going to be miserable, well, you're going to be miserable. One thing I learned just on my journey, my short adult life, is that when you let outside forces determine, if you let the outside forces determine your life, well, they will always determine your life. And me coming from an inner city, I mean, necessarily some would call it the ghetto, but hey, it was like living with $1 million to me. I didn't know. Um, you learn to make the best of your life, regardless of the area around you. And I can honestly say that being positive, always speaking positivity into your life, that's what this journey is all about. Especially for us. Let me tell you, I am more than proud to be black, but I'm even happier to be who I am, and that is this handsome, light-skinned, gay man, educated, and all these other things that we give ourselves titles. But at the end of the day, I am happy for who I am. And let me tell you, the road is not easy for any of us. But just statistically, which we all know, it's definitely not easy being black, and it's definitely not easy being black and LGBT either. So you have to find a way to be positive. You have to find a way. And like my friend said, whether that's writing, reading a book, turning up for some of us, I mean, you have to find a way to live life and be happy. Because if you are always worried about what the next person thinks, man, you are sending yourself to a very soon death, because a miserable heart cannot thrive.
I would also like to add that I'm a firm believer in the fact that visibility is survival. So as far as making sure that I stay positive, I have been blessed with some amazing friends at my time at Morehouse College, including Denzel Cameron, Timothy Paul Tukes, my entire e-board, Sharif Phillips, Colin, Jordan. I mean, to be invisible among your own people can create like a horrible suffering. And I would say that having those friends in my life has allowed me to really, it's like a reminder of my blessings. And I'm a firm believer in prayer, and I prayed for those friends. And to see them and to hear their voices every day is a reminder of God's commitment to my life, of God's protection, of God's promise. And it has allowed me to reconcile broken relationships in my life. It has allowed me, having those friends has allowed me to do courageous things that I never thought that I'd be able to do. Um, and I would just say, yeah, really having, great friendships. And for those of you who are struggling to find friends, I would say it is really easy to find reflections of yourself. You have to find it though. If reflections of yourself in, whether it be literature, film, what else? I mean, because I'm a person who loves the arts, so I have found, a lot of spoken word artists who speak to issues that we go through on a daily basis. Some of them include not just spoken word artists, but just people who are, you know, in media and performing arts, such as Kiki Williams, who is a queer performer. And is also associated and a good friend of Jamal Lewis, who is coming out with a new documentary, No Fats, No Femmes. I mean, to see these individuals, actually put out bodies of work in order for us to see our reflections is really inspiring. And it speaks, they lead, and I would also say that they lead by example in showing us that, hey, if you want to see, reflections of yourself, when dominant culture is telling you that you need to be silenced or erased, that you need to go ahead and, either invest in those people who are putting out those inclusive bodies of work, or start creating, for yourself. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been on a journey of learning how to create, specifically in, videography and documenting the stories of queer students at Morehouse College. And just throwing myself in that work has allowed me to, it's been very therapeutic for me. And it has also allowed me to connect with other members of the community and help, build community. So I think that's what helps me to stay positive. So,
Mary, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, why don't we take one more question? I see a great question about being visible. So Bradley would like to know, do you have advice for people who may be scared to be visible or their authentic self on their campus?
I would say,
That's right up my alley. That's right up my alley. I'll take this one, Ray. Well, I can honestly say, being at the fourth largest HBCU in the country, that visibility, when you have about 10,000 students at your school, or however many you may have at your school, people walk past you every day, and you may be doing something that they may like, that they may not, but that's just one out of what, 10,000, and chances are you might not even cross the person after you graduate. I've learned to look at it this way: there is no better time than now to not only be yourself, but stand for what you believe in, because you just might not get another chance. I was once in S5. Ray knows, at Morehouse, I wasn't trying to do nothing. I was just trying to graduate and, get my maroon jacket and sit with all the crowning men of Morehouse, sit under Dr. King's statue and just be proud of who I am. But I felt a void because I saw him doing things, standing for what he believed in. Though we believed in the same thing and he chose, we used to have a lot of conversations of what the school needed to change and what it didn't. But I wasn't doing anything. And one thing I learned, you could give somebody else your ideas, but only you can implement them because they're your ideas. And I think we concern ourselves a little bit too much of what other people think they feel. Because guess what? They don't care how we feel. When they pass these different laws and things at our schools, they don't care what we think. When they decide to put a dress code at our school or on per gender, they don't care what we think. So, in turn, we should not care what they think when it comes to us being, just like a person said earlier, when you're visible, that means they know you're there. And when they're there, when you're there, they cannot silence you. And you won't let them silence you. So there's a sense of power that comes from being visible. Now, I'm not saying becoming a celebrity, but standing simply for what you believe in. They will. Somehow, it always works that way. Somehow, it will learn to respect you.
Thank you. So I know we are getting very, very close to the end of the hour. I once again want to just thank each and every one of our presenters. I want to thank Gender Spectrum for being a great host and co-collaborator for this event. And I also just want to kind of give a quick little plug about the My Story Out Loud campaign. You can find it on Tumblr. We also exist on Facebook under Youth Resource. So if you look in that little Facebook tab and you look for Youth Resource, we're there. And also on Tumblr, we have a collection of stories that come from some of our folks that are presented today. Some spoken word pieces that really highlight, like Ramon was saying, what experiences are happening on campus. And I also want to just open the space up to know that it's not just a space where, we kind of bash universities. I mean, they need them, right? But it's also a place for us to be able to celebrate who we are and the strides that we've made. I mean, the three presenters are just really great examples of what mobilization with your community can look like on the ground. What action can be taken when you find your people and you move together. And that's what My Story Out Loud is about. It's about finding your people, and it's about moving together. So I thank each and every one of you for participating. I thank each and every one of you that joined us this afternoon, this evening, whatever coast you were on. And I also want to just let you know that that is what Monster Out Loud is here for. We are here to create safe and supportive environments for people that live at the intersection of race, orientation, and gender. And with that, we send you all off with best wishes and well blessings, and we will see you on the internet. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you all. Check out the recording of this program on Gender Spectrum's YouTube channel, and check out the Gender Spectrum Lounge for more conversations about race and gender. Thanks a lot.